Now, I have to start my review by asking, so there's a joke in this movie called "What's a fart that sounds and smells like nothingness" or something like that, and then the punchline is Sartre or Sart. So I get that it's a rhyme, and Sartre wrote a book called Being in Nothingness, but if anyone can explain that joke to me, because honestly, right over my head. Anyway, so this movie called Dude just came to Netflix. It was great. Now, very simple premise. There's these four female high school seniors and their friends, and there's a tragedy. And then it just shows them coping with this tragedy and then also dealing with going to colleges, maybe going to different colleges, first attempts at intimacy. Actually, in their case, not first attempts at intimacy, many intimacy veterans, you could say. And they're dealing with all this kind of stuff. And at first, you might think that I didn't know what kind of movie it was going to be at first. I didn't know anything about it. At first, I thought it was a satire of look how awful kids are these days and look how depraved and rude and raunchy they are, but it's totally not. Now, the film is raunchy. The girls, they're very lewd and crass. They play Would You Rather. They talk about sex a lot in a very, very crass way. But not just that, the director, they show everything. And they show everything in a very unpolished, unglamorized way. So we see female masturbation in the most desexualized and least appealing way we could possibly see. We see female urination, and again, very realistic, not sexualized at all. We hear them talking about periods and how they're punctuated by two giant dumps. We see them talk about tampons being stuck up there and how it's like a loom and like Penelope fighting off the suitors. Again, I know it's from the Odyssey, but I didn't get that one either, if anyone wants to help me out with that. So I really think that the big difference between this and something like Superbad is that this isn't really a kind of a movie with a traditional plot and all these conventional plot elements. No, it really is trying to be more naturalistic and just a slice of life and saying, look, this is how certain kids and a large segment of the population, this is a real coming of age story. This is what real kids in their high school friend groups act like and how they talk. And I did think it was realistic and believable how they talk to each other. Now, some of the lines were really cringeworthy, but they're young kids, they're wannabe gangsters, they're high a lot of the time, so of course some of the lines are going to be stupid and cringeworthy. It's still believable. And I think one thing that distinguishes it from something like Project X, where it treads that line between satirizing, glorifying, and just portraying typical partying kids, is that tragedy that I talked about. And there was kind of this great juxtaposition of typical teenage confidence and feelings of invincibility and being in kind of this youth bubble, and then starting to get their first hints of just how cold and uncaring and unfair the world can be. And you know that, as with everyone else, there's going to be a lot more of that kind of exposure as they live their lives, but we get the first little hint of it, and how they're still partying, they're still kind of doing their things like they normally do, but in the back of their mind, they're starting to realize, maybe adult life and maybe the rest of our lives is going to be a little different. And at first I had the criticism that I didn't feel like the movie had a distinct visual style, and whereas a movie like Spring Breakers had this great dreamlike style, and I thought if this movie had it, it could have been a real classic and something that I really would have liked. But then I realized that this movie didn't want to be that kind of movie. It didn't want to be stylized. It wanted to be more realistic and actually tackle some serious issues. And I thought that I take back my earlier criticism when it showed there's a rape scene, and probably one of the most realistic depictions of a really, really common form of rape, sexual assault, that you never really see talked about, and yet it's probably one of the more common forms of rape. And I think it's an issue where a lot of people would look at that and be like, oh, well, that's not rape, that's just that's shitty sexual behavior, but that doesn't rise to the level of rape. But that's why I think it's so great that they would show a scene like that, because it gets people actually talking and having a dialogue, which I do think is important. And there wasn't a ton of big name actors, but good performances all around. I will say Alexandra Shipp, she did Tragedy Girls recently, and now this, so she's doing a lot of these indie female-centric movies. Very interesting selection for her. And then one of the actresses who plays one of the four girls, there was a song that comes on at the end of the movie, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool song. I actually looked it up. Turns out it was performed and written. She's the artist, so she's a rapper turned actress. So I thought that was really cool as well. And then Jack McBrayer is in this. Now, he was the guy from Forgetting Sarah Marshall, the newlywed Christian who was struggling to have sex for the first time. He never has big roles in movies, but he always steals them. He was only on the screen for about 20 seconds in this one, but he had some great lines. He's talking to his students, and I don't know why, but he's talking to them about throwing a tennis ball, because his friend in prison is jonesing, so throwing a tennis ball of drugs over the wall to his friend in the yard. Very inappropriate, but he's pulling it off. And then one of his students is like, I have to go to the bathroom, and he's like menstruation, it's a miracle, I'm jealous, I wish I could undergo it myself. So again, just steals the movie in that little 20 seconds. And one of the mothers of the girls, I thought she was really a great depiction, and again, the realism of a great mother, an awesome mother, but struggling nonetheless. And all parents struggle to an extent, but she's a single mother, and some of her lines just heartbreaking. She's talking to the absentee father on the phone. You know, graduation's coming up. It's going to be a big one. Might make up for all the other ones you missed. Well, it won't, but you still should come. And just, she has this wisdom. She totally sees where her daughter is going wrong and being immature, and she has this wisdom she wants to convey, but partly because she doesn't know quite how to convey it, and partly because her daughter probably wouldn't listen no matter how she conveyed it. She's just not able to share this wisdom, and it's just frustrating. And I have to say, the graduation speech given at the end, one of the best. I've seen a lot of graduation speeches depicted on television or in movies, and this is one of the best ones I've seen. Very well written, but also very heartfelt. She talks about friendships being forged in tears, and hours spent in the same cars and in front of the same TVs. It was just felt very real, very not movie-like, and goes in keeping with this whole movie. Often felt like more of a documentary, and even, like I say, just a little fly on the wall into the lives of these four friends rather than any kind of cinema, big production. And then probably my favorite moment, she's trying to get out of a ticket with a cop, and she says, yeah, I'm going to university, I'm going to Columbia, it's a university. Just insults the cop's intelligence as she's trying to get out of a ticket. Just classic oblivious young person move. And then the cops just, oh really, it's a university, I had no idea, I thought it was just a country. And there's a great Leroy Jenkins reference. If you don't know the movie clip, look it up. And then very funny weed names, in particular Neil deGrasse Tyson, classic stoner weed name that someone would give us. So I think it's a great movie. Honestly, I have nothing bad to say about it. Some of my, like I say, wishing it could be a different kind of movie, they would have made the movie worse, because for what it wanted to be, I think the movie was perfect. And that was not a movie with these ups and downs and highs and lows and twists and turns. No, it was just a real great slice of life, and do an underrepresented. Now, there's a lot of movies with teenage girls in them, but I think a movie that focuses really on the teenage girl experience, or I should say one teenage girl experience of last year of high school, kind of what that's like, problems with friends, you know, staying together after high school, even when you're going to different colleges, like all these different things that I think, you know, you might see a lot, but to see them depicted with such realism in this movie, I thought it was great.